Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first installment of the Ask the Expert webinar series. We are joined today by Adobe and Webqem, and together we will better understand the shift in customer behaviour and provide valuable insights into helping retailers capitalise on the 2020 experience. I'm Ali Thiam, the editor of Power Retail. It's lovely to have everyone here today. We have a great lineup of panelists for you today, but before I introduce everybody, I have a little bit of housekeeping to get through first. If you have any questions for our speakers, be sure to ask them in the questions pop-up on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the session. So today, we are joined by Brett Sinclair, Commerce Specialist at Adobe, and Michael Wilton, the Head of E-Commerce at Webqem. It's a pleasure to have both of you here today.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Thanks, Al. Good to be here.
Brett is an e-commerce specialist at Adobe, and he has been in the field for over a decade. He's managed firsthand all of the functions of e-commerce, including web merchandising, digital marketing, user experience, technology selection and implementation, customer support and fulfillment, and other operating areas. Lovely to have you here. It's very exciting. And as the head of e-commerce at Webqem, Michael has been running enterprise-level projects for several years and is a certified Magento 2 solution specialist. Michael's role requires a deep understanding of clients' businesses and needs with a view to defining the optimal solution, considering requirements, timeline, and budget. Over the years, Michael has delivered delivered scores of projects across B2B and B2C in the fields of industrial supplies, liquor, fashion, pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and educational supplies, just to name a few. Michael has been with Webqem since 2014, having spent 5 years in Sydney and the last 2 years in Seattle. Typically, Michael returns to Sydney each quarter to run workshops and deliver projects while focusing on maintaining strong, long-term relationships with all his clients. Lovely to have you here too.
Thank you very much.
So looking back on 2020, it's unsurprising that online shopping has reached new levels of popularity, with lockdowns facing every single Australian state and working from home becoming widely embraced. The changes in customer behaviour that's come along with the e-commerce boom is undeniable. And the enormous shift to online may have been unprecedented, but it has dramatically changed and transformed how customers respond and embrace retail. In today's webinar, our guest speakers will discuss the learnings from the last 12 months and will address the areas of customer retention, increasing a retailer's conversion rate, and reducing cart abandonment. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Michael, let's start with you.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, Ali, if you want to go to the overview slide, I might just pause my video so it's less distracting as I go through all of this, and then I'll bring my video back when we get to Q&A at the end.
No worries.
Great, thanks. So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar on how to capitalise on the 2020 experience. Today, we're going to be looking at a few key data points that provide a window into customer behaviour, and we're going to be asking ourselves questions around what the data tells us and how we can read the data to help inform business decisions. So as we read this data and provide our own insights into what it means, we're going to be thinking about the implications for customer retention, increasing your conversion rate, and reducing cart abandonment. So before we get into the graphs, thanks Ali and thanks to Power Retail for providing these data points. And I want to let the folks out there know that these data points are quite robust. So just so you know what we're about to look at, it's a combination of survey and benchmark data. The survey data is collated every few weeks from thousands of respondents, and the benchmark data is collated in real time through the collaboration of hundreds of merchants who share their data. Finally, it's my hope that the discussion today will provide you with some actionable items that you can implement right away and provide you with some talking points to take to your team. So Ali, do you want to go to the next slide? So kicking off, we're looking at online revenue. So this really shows exactly what happened last year. It's no surprise that online revenue greatly increased in 2020. The reasons are obvious to all of us and directly tied to the pandemic. But aside from showing an increase, this graph also shows that there is some seasonality. So we see an increase in Q4 in 2019 correlates to the Christmas shopping period. In Q1 of 2020, it goes back to a similar point post-Christmas, and then there's this sharp increase in Q2 when lockdowns happen around the world. There's even a further increase in Q4, representative of that seasonal uptick for Christmas shopping. Now, if not for the pandemic, this would be incredibly exciting for online merchants. However, it doesn't necessarily show an increase in business revenue, right? It's more that the share of online revenue has increased, which makes sense. Now, each merchant's experience of this change will be slightly different depending on your specific business model. It may be that you had stores that had to close and your revenue simply moved from in-store to online. It may be that with the increase in online traffic, you've gained new customers. It may be that you pivoted your business model to adapt to this changing landscape, for example. You may have previously been focused on B2B, but now have a B2C channel, or maybe you've changed or increased your product offering. Whatever the reason, the reality is that there are more people purchasing online than ever before. And in the online merchant space, we want to keep them, right? So, Brett, I might ask you a question from your role at Adobe. What have you noticed?
Yeah, Michael. Looking at this this chart, I mean, it definitely reflects what we're seeing across our customer base and the merchants that are coming to us to discuss their business initiatives in the digital commerce space. I mean, what I'm seeing, I guess, holistically, is that companies and boards and senior leaders are wanting to accelerate their digital transformation, or those initiatives that they had planned maybe 18 months, even 2 years out, and bringing them forward to improve their customer experience online, because obviously you have to go where your customers are. And as as this graph showing that you mentioned the shift from going from more bricks and mortar purchases to online. So they're really looking to, I guess, try and remove any friction that they had in their customer experience online. And in areas like click and collect, for instance, as well, has been a huge focus. It's a common theme that we keep seeing pop up, where before there may be some areas of the merchants click and collect that weren't as seamless as they would have liked, or they're trying to potentially shift as well part of that that omni-channel customer journey, moving more of that the parts that were maybe in store, moving them to online as well. So, and also a big shift in focus on customer loyalty as a priority in times like this, trying to retain as many customers as possible. And I guess probably one other area, it's still a gap, is probably understanding the customer behavior and identity. And I've seen that still as a big challenge for businesses. I'm just thinking, Michael, from your experience and the customers that you're working with, is that something that you're still noticing?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to your point on click and collect, certainly here in the States, I've noticed a huge uptick in click and collect, and it's kind of phrased more like curbside pickup, and it's become a huge part of online traffic. There's an expectation that you can buy online and get turn up to Best Buy an hour later, and there it is, someone will bring it to your car. Honestly, it's been an improvement, I think, to online shopping. I've really enjoyed it. But yeah, look, I mean, in terms of the kinds of challenges that I'm seeing with merchants, one of the biggest ones is probably to do with collating their data. So oftentimes, we'll see merchants that have numerous platforms. They work with lots of different agencies and teams that perhaps don't collaborate well. So, a common mix might be you've got Google Analytics, you've got Magento Business Intelligence, you've got a marketing automation platform, maybe you're working with an SEO agency, maybe there's a separate SEM agency, you've got your own content strategy and marketing team, you've got your development team. So there's a challenge there in collaborating and getting that 360-degree view of your customer broken up into parts. So one of the things I think you should be thinking about and putting some effort in is collating this into a sort of a single clear dashboard. Although really you can have number of dashboards really for the different stakeholders within the business. So you might have a dashboard for C-suite who care about revenue and return on investment, the dashboard for the marketing team who care about their conversion rates and tracking campaigns, fulfillment care about tracking delivery and returns, and your development team care about speed and performance. Additionally, and I'll pick this up a few times throughout the presentation, like we often see merchants doing the right thing in terms of experimenting, but they're not tagging their campaigns properly. So it's not clear what's working, what isn't. So keep that in mind when you're experimenting. Ali, you can go to the next slide. So, we know there's an increase in online revenue. What's that a result of? It's the result of new and returning customers. It makes sense. And that's what we're seeing here, the highlights being that new customers have roughly doubled, returning customers have nearly tripled. And this is backed up by that survey data. So the survey data I mentioned before, with thousands of respondents every other week. 34% of them are saying that they rarely shopped online before 2020, with the number one reason being convenience. Makes sense. The next few reasons, sort of in order, actually number 2 was like taking advantage of bargains. Number 3 was to avoid catching COVID. Number 4 was that they actually have more time now to spend online browsing and shopping. So if we consider some of those survey data points, we can start to talk about strategies to capture these customers. So if you think about taking advantage of bargains, right? So we all know it's easy to compare pricing across businesses. The internet's made that extraordinarily easy. So you need to make sure as a merchant that you've got the appropriate data feeds in place to show up in search results. You need to make sure that you're on top of what your competitors are doing if you're selling the same kinds of products. A good one, I think also, people are telling us that they've got more time to spend online. So, what does that mean? It means that you need to ensure that you're creating engaging experiences for your customers. And for the last few years, so certainly leading up to 2020, a lot of people were talking about this notion that customers buy experiences and not products. And honestly, I always kind of found that like kind of an annoying statement. Working in e-commerce, and I was very product centric. But now, it seems to make a lot more sense to me, having gone through what we've gone through in 2020. So I think that notion of buying experiences is so important, particularly, that's where your returning customers are coming from. Right? They engage with you, they have a good experience, they become evangelists, ideally, they tell other people to come to your site, and then they return because they've had such a good experience. So, how do you deliver that good experience? There's a bunch of different ways. In e-commerce, we're selling products, right? So you need to have superb product imagery. There's really no excuse to have low-res images now. There's so many ways to optimize images server-side within platform. So that's probably number one. Next, video content. It really does convert. It can be anything from unboxing, how-to, lifestyle videos. You need to have some blog content. Rich product descriptions is very, very important. You don't want customers going elsewhere to find details. That's a potential loss in sale if they have to go somewhere else to see what are the dimensions of this product, how much does it weigh, those kinds of things. And if you don't have that product, like if it's not in stock, or you simply don't have it, make sure you know what customers are looking for, and usually your platforms can track what people are searching for on your site. Take note of that, and see, it'll be a mix of misspellings, but it'll also potentially give you some insight into what people are searching for on your site. So if you don't have that, think about what products you can offer them, like in terms of related products. So that's the sort of people search for X, also look for Y, that kind of thing. Next, we need to consider, how customers heard about you. Yeah, sorry, Ali, I'm waffling on this one a bit. We're almost ready for this. So when we think about how customers, we need to think about how customers engaged before they get to your site, and then what happens when you're on your site. So in terms of that off-site engagement, that's where we're looking at your marketing automation platform. Plenty to choose from, Marketo, Digital, to name a few. There's a number of basic automation workflows that everyone should have in place. This is some low-hanging fruit here. So, your welcome campaigns, your nurture campaigns, if they're signing up for a newsletter, making their first purchase, adding to or changing their wish list, abandoned carts, which we'll talk about a little bit later, newsletters. There's plenty of documentation on what you should be doing in that space. So, make sure you're across that. But you need to be making sure, again, like I mentioned before, that you're tracking properly so you understand the impact of these changes. You've got SEO and SEM. SEO, like products like Magento, are built with SEO in mind, like SEO-friendly URLs, the kind of basics. But SEO is more than just the URL. So make sure you're investing in an SEO strategy because that is the cheapest way to get customers to your site. SEM, like paid search, that's designed to pick up where SEO meets its limits, and it becomes increasingly relevant if you're trading in a space with a lot of competitors. And then next, if you're lucky enough to actually get someone to visit your site, especially if it's for the first time, you need to make sure that, number one, your site is clearly laid out and easy to navigate. We'll go into that in more detail a little bit later. Other things like, it needs to be easy for your customers to get help. So that's your live chat, that's your chat bot, that's your FAQ page. You need to demonstrate trust. So that's testimonials, things like Trustpilot, reviews about working with your brand, product reviews, could be Magento, Yotpo, Bazaar Voice, Google, that kind of thing. Also make sure that your product reviews are set up so that they're returned in search results. And then finally, give this customer the experience that what they're looking for, what they need, and that's sort of when we get into personalization.
Yeah, actually, Michael, just on that point, good to just maybe talk a little bit more about personalization. I guess when we, when we have various discussions with merchants, and we talk about, delivering a premium online customer experience, personalization, always comes into that conversation. And, I definitely see that it's still, quite a big challenge for many merchants. I'm always quite surprised actually that, companies that we'll talk to that, doing quite well and big brands, but they're actually not doing really anything in the on-site personalization space for a number of reasons. So I'm just curious from your lens, why is that? Like, what are the big challenges? And, for people on this webinar that maybe aren't doing much in that space either, like, what would you say is the low-hanging fruit?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, personalization, it can be pretty complex depending on how narrow you want that personalization to be. So I guess I think about personalization probably in two main areas. So there's content and product recommendations. So, content is probably the hardest to do, particularly if you have a large number of customer groups. Technically, it's not that difficult if you're on a platform like Magento Commerce, because you can segment customers based on whatever rules are relevant to you. But I guess the main challenges are time. It takes a lot of time to write different copy for multiple audience, and that increases exponentially depending on the frequency of updating that content. And SEO, in our experience, we've either found it not possible or very difficult for Google to index dynamic content. So typically that means that you'll need to have some generic static content and offer personal content when the customer logs in. But then that raises the issue of challenges associated with getting customers to create an account and log in. But I guess the simplest form of content with personalization is probably related to your marketing automation platform. So, for that to work well, you need it to be integrated with your shopping cart. Something like .digital, out of the box with Magento is a good one. Then you can set triggered campaigns that include, the customer's name, their on-site behavior, that kind of thing. So that's probably what I'd say in the content space. Lowest hanging fruit is really product recommendations, because you don't necessarily need to be logged in. If you're using AI-driven results, like something like Adobe Sensei, there's several things that you can implement that will give you, personal product recommendations based on, pre-logged in tracking your on-site behavior, and post-logged in your actual behavior. So that's things like, recommended for you, which is based on each shopper's current and previous site behavior. It's the kind of thing that you're going to see with cookies, and if you're not logged in, or if you are logged in, actually what you're doing. Things like viewed this, bought that, which recommends the most often purchased by shoppers and people who viewed a specific item. There's a whole bunch of them, more like this, trending, that kind of stuff. So yeah, low hanging fruit for me, product recommendations. Thanks, Ali. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so look, what we're looking at here, this is straight up survey data. So we're taking a look at decision points that are impacting why customers make a purchase, and importantly, why they returned to make a purchase with you. So not surprisingly, that the results are quite similar, and the number one, everyone probably knows, number one decision point relates to shipping. So just as an aside, although 72% of people said they were likely to make a purchase if there was some kind of money back offer, only 14% actually in the last 6 months made a purchase decision because of that. So you don't have to be giving things away, but back to shipping, I don't think it can be overstated how important that is. Of course, it depends, depending on where your warehouse is located, the type of product you're selling, the distance it needs to travel for delivery. It isn't necessarily an easy call to make, but there are some must-haves. So, ideally, number one, ideally you've got free shipping. Now, typically that'll be, if the cart is over X dollars, and it's okay for that to be the slowest method of delivery. And each merchant will have a rubric to work out at what point what point do they hit the right margins to be able to sell, to be able to offer free shipping. It's very often, if you've got at least $100 in your cart, but it can be more. But that's typically what we see. And then the other thing, and this is going to come up a few times, you've got to be clear, and when we talk about cart abandonment later, you'll see this again, you've got to be clear about what your shipping options are well before the customer makes it to the checkout. So, maybe at the top of the website, you've got, free shipping over X dollars, and that's everywhere. It's always visible. You might have shipping options on your product pages, and even better is you can ask customers for their postcode and dynamically present them with options and prices. That's sort of best case scenario. I guess then we move on to user experience. This is the next thing people are saying is why they purchase. So the most obvious thing you need to ensure is that your site is optimized for mobile. It's going to take a few forms. Responsive website, which is at this stage is assumed. If you don't have a responsive website, then you're well behind the times. You might also have an app. Best use case for an app is if customers need to purchase frequently and need offline capabilities, or maybe you've developed using PWA, so the site's downloadable and really fast. Next, you've taken the time to understand how your customers engage with your site at different breakpoints. So, for example, like the mobile experience needs to be clean and simple. The desktop experience can be more complex and present additional information to increase that engagement. But also, keep in mind who your customers are. Like you might have B2B customers who are sitting at their desk at work and they need to use your site all the time. They're ordering frequently. So maybe they don't want to go down that sort of engagement route. They want to be able to find the products quickly, place the order, do repeat orders, that kind of thing. So make sure that you really understand who your customers are and how they're using your site at different breakpoints. Next, I think, I strongly recommend, and not everyone takes me up on this, but I strongly recommend that people perform a UX review at least once a year. You should be making iterative improvements all the time, and you should be redeveloping your theme probably every few years, like 3 years is a good benchmark. And then, other decision points here to just sort of finish off what this graphs are telling us, like trust, that's your testimonials, your reviews, customer service, that's your live chat, chatbot, FAQ, clear comms about shipping, return policies, personalization that we talked about, on-site dynamic dynamic content rather, product recommendations, marketing automation workflows, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Michael, I wouldn't mind just touching a bit more on user experience. You mentioned, earlier that people buy experiences. One of the stats I always remember when I first joined Adobe that we went that got tabled to me once around something that the Harvard Business Review published, where they said 97.8% of the value of imitation goes to imitators. And what that obviously tells us is that experience does matter more than anything. And I think it's good, we're seeing a lot of customers spending more time in the UX space and investing more in that part of the process. I guess I just wanted to see whether you could talk us through some good examples of customers that you work with that have invested into user experience design and achieved some good results.
Sure. So the one that comes to mind, and so it's probably the most recent project I did. I'm quite proud of it, and look, it's a little plug. So we'll talk about Shorty's Liquor. We recently deployed a new channel for them. They're getting into gifting. So you guys can take a look at it. It's like gifting.shortiesliquor.com.au. And underpinning this entire project was an understanding of Shorty's customers, right? What they needed and how they wanted to place an order. So if I think about like the key customer journey, this was corporate customers. So think leading up to Christmas, right? And this is when we deployed, like November last year. So key customer journey, corporate customers, they wanted to be able to send gifts to their employees and their clients, right? They needed to be able to send potentially hundreds of recipients in a single workflow. They wanted to be able to add some personal messaging, and this was the real kicker. They may not actually know the recipient's delivery address, right? So maybe all they know is their name, their mobile number, email, that kind of thing. So we took that on board and developed what I think is kind of a unique workflow, and I encourage you to go out there and see for yourself, see if you agree with me. So this is the journey we've built. There's customers add products to the cart, then they go into adding their recipient details. So this can be done individually. You can send 1 gift, 5 gifts, or if you're a corporate, you can upload in bulk. So there's an option to download a CSV, just put in all of the people's details, upload it, and then bam, instantly you've got the recipients for unlimited number. Like we had some corporates adding several hundred recipients in a single order. And like I mentioned before, like most importantly, all you needed to know was their name, their email address, and their mobile number, which is an unusual e-commerce workflow. So then, you've got your recipients. Next, you can personalize the delivery by adding custom messaging, and this like goes in the email to that recipient. It can be like, hey Brett, thanks for all your hard work this year. Good on you. Here's like a bottle of champagne as a thank you, that kind of thing. You can even pull in video, like you can add a YouTube link, and that YouTube video will come into that email. It clicks off to YouTube, but you can have that video, personalized video. We even developed an interface to be able to upload video like from your phone to Vimeo. So, if you can take it to that level, then you like set a delivery date for the email and SMS. So there's two-pronged approach. It goes to the recipient, and ultimately they're informed something like, hey Brett, Michael from Webqem has sent you a gift. Click on this link and tell us where you want it to be delivered. And you click on the link, you tell me where you want it delivered, date, time, all that kind of stuff, and it's done. It's a really, really great workflow. And I think, it's important to understand, like shorties, they value this constant improvement and iteration. So, we developed this solution in about 6 weeks because it was important to get out for corporates for Christmas. Since then, I think we've had probably 15 releases. We continue to scope and roll out improvements. There's a development roadmap that extends for the next 3 months. We continue to add new features and improve that experience. And, shorties are good in that they are also in constant contact with their customers, getting feedback, which informs those new features.
Yeah, that's a great overview, Michael, because I have used that site before, and I was blown away by that gifting experience. And someone actually gave me the gift first, which is how I first found out about it. And yeah, I was very impressed with that whole workflow that you described. So congrats to you guys and the Shorties team for pulling that together. And because I just, when you talk us through that, there's obviously a fair bit involved potentially in delivering that sort of innovation to the gifting experience. And, I think about a lot of the retailers, people working in retail, and right now you could say that maybe a lot of their existing workflow, their site is pretty basic or standard, your homepage, your catalog page, product page, checkout, that's it. But maybe there is something more innovative that they want to do that's in their category, but it's probably going to require this type of deeper analysis and discovery. I think it'd be valuable if you could talk us through, what does that experience, user experience discovery and design process look like?
It's not dissimilar to like starting a new project, right? So you go back to the basics and the foundation of developing any kind of asset. So right at the top, you've got to clearly define your goals and objectives. You need to define who your customers are and what the various journeys are. Assuming the website already exists, then you need to go through as each customer type, take note of the different pain points. You should probably also be keeping a running wish list of features, desired improvements. And this is important, like you always need to challenge new feature requests, requirements against those agreed goals and objectives. Like it's circular. So if a new feature doesn't serve an agreed goal or an objective, then maybe you don't need to do it. Or maybe it's a reason to review your goals and objectives. Like maybe you've stumbled across something that you've missed. Either way, always challenge. There's one other thing, I forget the name of the product at the moment, but you'll always be building wireframes, but you should also consider like building prototypes. So there's a tool, right, that can allow you to and this is about information architecture. So there's a tool that allows you to create navigation structures. You share that prototype with respondents. You ask them to find X, that could be a category or a product, and the tool tracks how many clicks it takes for people to find the target, and you use that to improve your navigation. Something that's really fun. Thanks, Ali. We can go to the next one. So here, yeah, look, we're looking at conversion rate through 2020. I guess the key takeaway is that it's improved by 20%. Not a huge surprise, right? We've got more people who are forced to purchase online. I always find these numbers quite low, like 3% still sounds like a low number. So let's, I guess, discuss strategies to encourage customers to actually make a purchase on your site. And just so you all know, like this is like benchmark data, so it's often different for different verticals. 3% might be low for you. If you're in the medical space, that would have gone through the roof last year. You know, electronics went up. You know, stuff around the home went up, but things like you know, buying new clothes kind of went down, right? Because we're all sitting in our pajamas. But so yes, you know, if we're talking about strategies to encourage an increase in your conversion rate, this brings us back to like clear messaging on shipping, which we've already discussed. Other strategies might be instant purchase, allowing people to buy with a single click, competitive pricing, promotion rules, which can be, you know, as complex as you like, gift with purchase, like my wife only ever buys Lancome and only ever buys Lancome when there's a free gift, right? So she saves up, waits till there's a free gift, and then buys lots of Lancome. You might earn points, store credit. If you're going to do that, then, you know, you should be thinking about, you know, giving people an incentive and triggered by behavior you want to encourage, right? So creating an account, signing up for a newsletter, making your first purchase, maybe they're sharing a link to your site that gives a friend a discount, that kind of thing. You've got to have great search. It's so important to have great search. I really like a product called Clevu, which delivers like AI-driven search results. It's a great tool for merchandising, helping customers find the right product, especially if you've got a really big catalog. Product recommendations, like we talked about, and inventory management. This is actually really important. So it's very important to ensure that customers can actually purchase the product on your site. Super frustrating to make it all the way to the checkout only to find that there isn't enough inventory. So if a product is low in stock, tell the customer, like display messaging around there's only X left in stock. If you know, you may choose to not show out of stock products, or if you do, don't let them add it to the cart. Instead, you know, allow them to be like, sign up to be like notified when it's back in stock, that kind of thing. Brett, but I might throw it over to you again. Like with the customers that you're working with across Adobe, like what are you seeing merchants investing their time into for improving conversion rates?
Well, definitely product recommendations is a really big one for us. You know, we had a release mid last year for a new product recommendations capability that is being powered by Adobe Sensei artificial intelligence. So, you know, a lot of the investment in our product roadmap is going towards helping marketers and merchandisers, you know, optimize conversion and, you know, remove a lot of that grunt work. So we're seeing a lot of our merchants spending time trying to leverage that new capability and optimize that for their business. You know, you mentioned search. It's a big one. You know, I think you touched on it earlier that, you know, customers that search on your site generally, I don't think I've ever gone into any customers analytics and, you know, seen a scenario where people who search are converting less than those that don't. They always usually convert higher. It's just how well you're doing it will affect, you know, how good that conversion rate is on search. So that's another area we're focusing on. I think it's around April or May. We're going to be leveraging that AI capability into our search to optimize that, and it's going to remove the need for customers to have a third-party search tool embedded in their site. So I think that's going to be a focus area for our merchants as well. And probably the third one would be mobile experiences. So looking at progressive web apps, looking at improving the performance of the front end experience. So just removing as much friction as possible, making their sites a bit more lightweight for mobile, and potentially as well altering that, having a different workflow for mobile as opposed to desktop to remove that friction. So yeah, I think that's probably the key areas right now where customers are looking to optimize.
I'm excited to see AI search. We're using the product recommendations, but yeah, that search, that'll be great.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ali. You can move on to the next one. Sorry, Ali, you can move to the next slide. Thanks. Is that one? Oh, I think, is there one before that? There we go. So I'm conscious of time. I've gone a little bit long, just so everyone online knows. There's two more slides, this one and the next one. They're both to do with cart abandonment. So I'll push through this as quickly as I can. But so here we're looking at cart abandonment, and like it's arguably probably the lowest hanging fruit, and everyone should be aware of this. So like if you're on Magento, don't have marketing automation platform, you can do this out of the box. And I'm talking about cart abandonment marketing. The slide, it's interesting, though it's also a little bit confusing. So you see that steady incline over 2020 and this dramatic drop off from Q3 to Q4. Now the data doesn't really give an explanation for this, but we can make some informed guesses, right? There's the reduction in cart abandonment matches up with that historical increase we saw in conversion for Q4 on Christmas, like right at the top. Now it's worth noting that this actually really only applied to pure play merchants, the omni-channel guys. It really didn't change much. Abandonment stays kind of flat. And we might also hypothesize that merchants noticed this steep increase and put strategies in place to combat that. So, with that in mind, like the survey data related to cart abandonment, it tells us that the #1 reason for abandonment is shipping costs and options, as we've seen. Like the survey data also gives us some insight into frequency. So about 40% abandon their cart on a weekly basis. Honestly, it's something that I do. If you're a savvy online shopper, you might be in the habit of adding products to the cart and abandoning to see if you can trigger that follow-up email, and that email might give a discount. You don't have to do a discount, so that's important. Often, people just forget that they have something in their cart, especially if they're in a rush. The survey data also told us about age groups. So pretty much all the age groups behave similarly, except for customers in that 65 and above who rarely abandon their cart, which sort of speaks to their purchasing behavior. They know what they want, they zero in to find it. I guess the main thing to think about here in terms of your cart abandonment strategy has to do with the frequency and timing of sending those emails out, right? So depending on the nature of the product, you might want to send out an abandoned cart email right away. This was the case for one of my clients, a florist, whose products were like occasion-based and typically needed to be purchased and delivered the same day. And we learned through testing that, if you sent emails days later, it was kind of a waste of time and actually resulted in higher unsubscribe rates. So that's important. I guess typically you'd want to send out the first email within 24 hours, and you might send a follow-up a few days later, even a week later.
Yeah, because I feel like, it's been around, a while, abandoned cart. I think probably a lot of people on this webinar, it's kind of nothing new, but, it still seems to me like, it's a big missed opportunity for a lot of businesses. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is Ecom 101, right? You're leaving cash on the table if you're not doing abandoned cart marketing. And as I mentioned before, like it's you don't necessarily have to follow up with a discount. Like most people are simply distracted and leave items in the cart, and they're happy to be reminded that it's still there. Thanks, Ali. You can go to the last slide for us. So this graph here, it actually shows us where customers abandon on this journey. Now, I find this graph a little hard to read, so I'll point out the two key takeaways. And that is that 57% of people abandon once they reach the product page. And of those 57%, 86% of them abandon once they add that product to the cart. So, this is actually quite an important journey to be aware of on your own site. If you don't have this visibility, then you need to change that right away. Like when we're building our analytics dashboards, we actually break the checkout into additional components so that we can see where people abandon on the actual checkout process, like when they signed in, when they add shipping details, when they add payment details, those kinds of things, because each data point is an opportunity to improve that journey.
Yeah, because I feel, I mean, it's a pretty big number, and I'm just trying to, thinking about, product page design and 101. How would you summarize the basics, Michael, like to reduce your abandon rate in this area? Is there a few items where you see people falling short, or key areas that you'd focus on?
Yeah. To me, and you see, like, a lot of people make it to the product page, so that's where you've got to focus. I think, on that product page, you've got to have excellent product imagery, ideally like several images showing different perspectives and that product being used in the real world. Video, like there's some crazy statistic I saw in a webinar recently where something like 50,000 years have been spent watching product reviews videos on YouTube, right? It's nuts, people love it. It is true that video converts, so, put some time into that. It can be expensive to create video, but it definitely converts. Can be, 360-degree rotation, something simple like that. It could be how-to videos, could be, using the product in the real world. Something, I mentioned earlier, like detailed product descriptions. So, make the most of those product names and short descriptions. Like Magento is built for SEO. That's the kind of stuff like the H1, H2s that's gonna come up there. But make sure you're also able to provide detailed specifications. So, although that data might be tedious, not having it is giving the customer a reason to go somewhere else to find it. What am I saying? There's like probably a couple more things, and then I'm done. Like inventory. As we mentioned, like if there's low stock, make sure you tell the customer. If it's out of stock, make sure that they can sign up to get notified. Product flags are good. Those are the kind of the flags that you'll see like over the corner of a product image. Might be things like they're like attributes, right? So it's new, it's organic, other things that are appropriate for your product range. And I guess the last one, and probably and arguably one of the most important, it's come up a bunch of times, is shipping rates and options. So make sure that customers know well before they're adding to cart and getting to the checkout exactly what their options are. And yeah, that's probably what I have to say about product pages.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That was just absolutely incredible. And we have run a little bit over time, so we're going to have to only ask a couple of questions. We do have one question, just some of the surprising developments that you've seen in e-commerce over the past 12 months. I'm going to throw that to both of you, actually.
What do you think, Brett? I like augmented reality. right? Seeing those products in your home. Not really the last 12 months though, but that's probably one of the most fun things.
Yeah, I mean that is pretty. It's definitely ramping up. That's for sure. I think just people willing to innovate on their business models and pivot quickly is pretty interesting. Michael mentioned before, the innovation on click and collect. We're moving away from even having you go in the store and more of a curbside pickup. Seen a number of models, those business models come through at Adobe, some established businesses, some startups. So I think we're going to see a lot more innovation in the digital commerce experience with the in-store experience as well, and how that model actually works is potentially going to shift somewhat, which I think is going to be really interesting.
Absolutely. We also have another question. Sorry, one second, just trying to figure everything out. So based on the data that you've seen, what would be one of the driving reasons why a customer would abandon a cart, other than what you've actually, what you mentioned before? There's like a specific reason why a customer would abandon their cart online, and how can retailers prevent this from actually happening in the future?
Yeah, well, I think it's, number one's got to be that there isn't appropriate shipping options, messaging around shipping options. It's so important. We're actually developing that for a client at the moment, so that, as part of the workflow, we're encouraging customers to add their postcode so that they can see product pricing and availability specific to their delivery location. And once they do that, on the product page, there's dynamic shipping options that show you based on, if you were to buy this one product, shipping options are X. If you add more products to the cart, this is where you're at right now, that kind of thing. And the other thing I guess I would say is the product pages, right? The product pages are not engaging enough to get that customer to hit that button, the add to cart button.
Yeah, I think the other area as well is just around performance of your website as well. Like you don't want to have a slow site that performs badly, particularly in those key moments like moving into the checkout. You want to have optimal performance in there, so you want to make sure that you've got all the best practices in place around that part of your online operation.
Absolutely. Now let's just all turn our cameras back on so we can see everyone's smiling faces. That's pretty much all we actually have time for today. It is, that these sorts of webinars can go on for hours and hours because there's so much to get through. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. If we didn't get to answer your question this afternoon, feel free to reach out to today's speakers. I would like to thank everyone for participating, joining us, listening in, and thanks to Brett and Michael for their time as well. So stay safe, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, all. Thanks, Ali. Thanks, Brett.
Bye.
Thanks.